Okay, enough of the bragging. How do we accomplish this goal? So what I want to do is basically break down from the start how we build these skills up incrementally. So it starts in the Montessori classroom. I know some of you have kids in the Montessori classroom right now. Often the kids come in not even knowing their letter sounds. Some can come in as fluent readers, but the place it starts is simply the formation of their letters. And Mrs. Beach has the letters broken down into groups of letters that are related by their shape, and they practice each of those letter shapes, those letter groups, until their handwriting is fluent and good and clear. Now, Mrs. Beach is a tyrant about the pencil grip, and we'll have kids transfer from other schools holding the pencil like this, holding the pencil like this. I wouldn't doubt that some of you hold your pencil incorrectly. If we didn't have Mrs. Beach and no one to stand over us and be time. But it's actually, there's a reason for this pencil grip, and there's actually, Montessori says that there's a stage at which the pencil grip is totally natural to them, and writing is easier for them if they hold their pencil correctly. So if any of you have little ones at home, these two fingers. If you're watching them, make sure that they're holding it correctly. If you're not sure, go ask Mrs. Beach. So when we have those kids who transfer in holding it incorrectly, sometimes we'll send them over to Mrs. Beach and say, she's going to show you how to hold your pencil correctly. Okay, so proper pencil grip, learning the basic letters. Then they move from letters to words. When they start forming things in the movable alphabet, they'll create their words, and then they'll be required to copy them onto paper. So they move from letters to writing words. Then she has a lot of activities in the Montessori classroom to get them from words to sentences, which will start, and this is one of the keys of the writing program in general, it starts by copying or imitation. At many stages of the program. They have to imitate first, then you can explain the explicit principle. So she will have them copy history, sentences about history off the board, or copy poetry, or there are some of the human needs activities that involve copying sentences. So copying is the first stage of forming sentences. A lot of the grammar exercises that they do will involve the formation of sentences and copying sentences. The main way that she gets them from copying to the formulation of their own complete sentences is through the literature book groups. So they have responses to the nightly reading that they're doing for literature. At first, she allows whatever expression of an answer they can give her. Their first expression is never a complete sentence. That doesn't come naturally to them. So, and again, we have to break it down into stages. So first, she'll just accept whatever answer they can formulate in writing. And then gradually she trains them what it means to formulate a complete sentence. Now you can't put that in explicit terms for a child. A complete sentence must have a subject and a predicate. I mean, that's reversing the hierarchy there, that we have to use something more abstract than they can understand to explain it. So again, it's by imitation. She'll just say the complete sentence for them, and then they just have to imitate it in writing. Or she'll give them semi-artificial rules. You can't start with because. There's no explanation of why. You just can't. You can't start with because. Or one of her favorite techniques is to say, if Miss VanDamme walked into the room right now and you read your answer to her, would she, ignorant of our books as she is, understand what you're saying? And that's usually really helpful for them. Oh, would Miss VanDamme understand what I'm saying? Then it adds the added intimidation factor of, I have to make it sound good to Miss VanDamme. So that the responses to literature is that bridge from writing words, writing sentences, copying sentences, to formulating your own sentences. Any questions about that before I move on to the... Okay. Then when they get to elementary, and currently Mrs. Battaglia is teaching them at the elementary level. Perfection of complete sentences, that is worked into every aspect of their education at that point. But then we want them to move from sentences to good paragraphs. Again, that's done partly by imitation. So what Mrs. Battaglia does is, let me step back a second. a couple years ago, Mrs. Fingerhut introduced us to a program called the Institute for Excellence in Writing, which I think is an amazing resource. We have some differences from their program, but they've contributed a lot to ours. And one of the things they have is a bunch of paragraphs that would be inherently interesting to a child. Biographical paragraphs. There was one recently that my daughter did something about that was about a gymnast who had or an Olympian, I don't know if it was a gymnast, who had polio and recovered and went on to, so things that are just motivating, inspiring, interesting to a child on their own. They read these, they learn to make what's called a keyword outline. So they take an introductory sentence, they have a few key words to represent the body sentences, and then a closing sentence. Then they put away the original. So now they've imitated the structure of an existing, well-written, interesting paragraph. And simultaneously, they're learning how to outline. So they're learning how to reduce something into a couple of words and make it indicate the whole meaning and be retainable, but it's all imitation. They're not being asked to form the structure of the paragraph, they're just imitating it. So now they have an outline. And from that outline, they write their own version of the paragraph. So it's a rewriting assignment, but it's still a creative assignment. They have to be able to formulate it in their own words, and it's a manageable creative assignment because there's that element of imitation in it. So they're starting with the structure provided for them. Now, another key aspect of the writing program at this time is what are called stylistic techniques or dress-ups. And you may hear your children use this term at home, so now you'll know what it is. Stylistic techniques and dress-ups are things like quality adjectives, quality verbs, ly words, varying sentence openers, so a bunch of different ways to start a sentence. So these are flourishes on writing, little techniques they learn to make their writing more creative, more expressive, more articulate. Well, they'll have, at this stage of the program, a checklist of required dress-ups. You must use one strong adjective. You must use one quality verb. You must use an ly word. You must use a who-which clause somewhere in your paragraph. And they will insert those into their writing. Now, inevitably, and if you read their writing and you see this, it's good, it's fine. It will be awkward when they do it at first. It will be awkward because they're forcing it into their writing and they're not sure exactly how to use it. That's okay. They need to stumble through it awkwardly first, but then what you'll find, what I've found, I always have the benefit of seeing this at home as well as at school. My kids, we have kind of an ongoing joke, they've taken to starting their sentences with ly words. So they'll say, "Mom, unexpectedly so-and-so." And I'll giggle and say, "Nice dress up." but it is, they've sort of habituated using these even in their own sentences since they've been required to use them in their writing for so long. So it starts as a forced, formal checklist approach, and then eventually they get the hang of, just with more maturity and experience and practice, they get the hang of how to use them, and after a while, the checklist goes away, and they just automatically insert these dress-ups into their writing. So, okay, so at the elementary level, there's the imitation, there's the dress-ups or the stylistic techniques. Another aspect of stylistic technique I have to mention because I love it and it carries through even to my kids. There's a list of banned words. Words that they're not allowed to use in their writing. Words like good, bad, got. Things that are used as a substitute for being articulate and precise. They're just catch-all words that don't really, or thing. I don't know if thing is a banned word, but it is for me. Things that, oh, did you hear what I just did? Words that are empty of any precise meaning and therefore make their writing bland and imprecise, not exact. So they are required, if they find those, to cross those out and replace them with words that more exactly match their purpose.